Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Got question Chase, has got the facts, talking NFL numbers, he's got your back. A little chart trend ball, man, he's got it like that. Chasing data by do champions. Chasing data applies to everyone. Chasing data, yeah, we're live today. Chasing data for always. Chasing data by do champions.
There we go. Now we're here. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Chasing Data. This is now, I believe, our fifth episode as we are making our way in reverse order from the worst teams in the NFL all the way up to the best team. Just a little quick recap. We started at 32 with Tennessee, 31 was Las Vegas, 30 was Cleveland, 29 was the New York Giants, and now tonight is number 28. And lo and behold, we've made it to the New Orleans Saints. I'll be joined shortly by a guy that covers the Saints very closely. I will play our interview coming up here soon, but first, let's get a quick word from our sponsors.
For the best Italian food in Western New York, Elliot Apollo's, call 716-825-3675. The Lardon Construction Group.
Fubo TV, the official streaming service of Do Champions. FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Do Champions.
For all your summertime needs, beauty pools, as well as kayak pools.
CX Chronicles, your total customer solutions focused manager. W.GG, the official energy drink of Do Champions.
Hey, Sons of Erie, our artwork looks better on your walls. Hamburg Brewing, please visit our tap room on Boston State Road, Hamburg, New York. And finally,
Fat Boy Surf Club for all your surfing needs.
Yeah, if only the Saints were as good as that intro. Long ways away from that, though. So if you're new to the show, what I do is I take the team and based on where they're at right now, I'll go through their entire roster. It's going to be a deep dive of the entire franchise. We'll look at their strengths, their weaknesses, the coaching staff, where they were from last year to this year, what they could or should do in the draft. Until we get to the draft, then we'll be assessing how they did in the draft. We'll look at their cap situation, along with their depth chart, looking at their areas of need and who could be a cap casualty, who could be cut from this team, what's the best and worst outlook, who's the X factor, who's the most improved player that I see going into 2025. We go real deep with. So, just to go ahead and get started, the Saints last year, a little bit of ups and downs. They finished the season 5-12. I say that record was skewed based on the fact that they played in the NFC South, which could be the worst division in the NFL, arguably. It's definitely a season of ups and downs. They started 2-0. They beat, I believe, it was the Panthers and the Cowboys, and they blew them out those first 2 weeks, winning by, 30 points in those first two games, and everyone was blown away by Clint Kubiak and what he could do with that offense and Derek Carr. And like I said, they start 2-0. They lose 7 straight, and they win 3 of the next 4 and lose the last 4. So it was definitely a roller coaster, up and down season for the Saints. As you know, Dennis Allen was the head coach. Then Darren Rizzi was the interim coach. 9-8 was Allen's best season, so just above 500. Last year, he was 2-7 before he finally got the boot. No pun intended. 3-5 under Rizzi, but not enough to keep him around. The last 2 years that Allen was defensive coordinator, the team ranked 4th and 7th in yards per game allowed. So 4th and 7th as a defensive coordinator. When he goes to head coach, they go to 5th, 13th, and then 30th. So it did not line up what we were expecting to see with him as a head coach. So overall, the team was ranked 27th per PFF grade. He was 18-25 overall in his career, so around a 41% win percentage. But now he's gone. We move on to Kellen Moore as the head coach. He was offensive coordinator in Dallas and then in Philadelphia, where they obviously won the Super Bowl this year. Philadelphia had the sixth ranked offense this year, and his average of the 6 seasons as an offensive coordinator, the average rank in yards per game is right over 8th place in the league for all 6 seasons. So I don't know. I mean, this is probably going to be a step up, especially for someone that are trying to get this offense going. I mean, they had a lot of injuries last year, which we will discuss in detail. Offensive coordinator is Doug Nussmeier, who was the quarterback coach in Philadelphia. So he follows Kellen Moore to New Orleans. Like I said earlier, it was Clint Kubiak. This offense overall for the entirety of the season, they did have a lot of injuries. But overall, the offense was ranked 23rd. The passing offense was 23rd. The run was 12th. The problem with this offense was the pass blocking ability. They were ranked dead last in the ability to pass block. Defensive coordinator, someone who is probably, our Saints fans should hope, is better as a coordinator than he was as a coach. Brandon Staley is in now. The defense was horrible, just as well. I mean, worse than the offense. They were ranked 30th, 31st against the run, and 26th versus the pass. And like I said, the Saints are hoping that they get that defensive coordinator version of Brandon Staley and not the head coach. Because when he was a head coach with the Los Angeles Chargers, defense did not live up to expectations it was hired for to take over. But when he was with the Rams that one season as the head coach, they were first yards per game allowed and points per game allowed. But before we get any farther into this, I'm going to go ahead and play the quick interview I had with my friend Adam. Let's get right into that. I'm here with my guy Adam, who's made some time to hop on and give us some real insight on Saints fandom and his thoughts for the upcoming season. What's up, Adam?
What's up, Chase? Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it, man. Let's talk New Orleans Saints. A lot to talk about. Let's get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be a tough offseason or a tough last few years for sure to be a Saints.
Yes, it is. To have a Saints podcast in these last couple of years has been rough, but
yeah,
what else can we do?
Yeah. All right, well, let's get right into it. My first thing I want to ask you about is, like, what's your thoughts on Derek Carr this year and going forward? Do you think he can be decent, good? And I mean, I guess the second half of that question is, should they keep him or try to hit a hard reset with him? What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, Derek Carr is what? He's 34 right now. He signed a four-year contract, $150 million. Dennis Allen was the head coach, and he was brought in to essentially be the franchise quarterback, right? To be the last missing piece. Dennis Allen had the season where he had Jameis Winston, and he had Andy Dalton. And essentially, Dennis Allen sold Mickey Loomis this picture that the only thing that was missing for the team to be successful and to compete in the NFC South was quarterback. Goes out, gets Derek Carr, signs him to a contract that the team didn't really want to sign him to. He convinces Mickey Loomis to sign him to this contract. And since that contract's been signed, Derek Carr as a Saints quarterback has been 14-13 in the games he started, not counting the games he's missed the miss as a starting quarterback. So you're looking at a team who has missed the playoffs in a number of seasons, and they're picking 9th in the draft. They won 5 games last year. So even taking my Derek Carr annoyance out of the picture, Derek Carr just doesn't seem to fit the timeline of where the Saints are in right now. He just seems to be in a place where he feels like if I was a Saints, I would be calling Colts. I would be calling the Colts because they want a quarterback to go in and compete with Anthony Richardson. They want like a veteran starter to potentially compete with Anthony Richardson. That's like Derek Carr needs to be on a team like that. Like where the Saints are doesn't fit with the Derek Carr timeline. But I forgot what your second part of your question was. My bad, man.
But that was well, it was if he could be decent and good, and if they should move on or reset. So
Yeah, I think, and it's tricky because I've been in podcast game and have cultivated some sources over the years. I was told that before Kellen Moore became the head coach, I was essentially told that one of the things he wanted was for Derek Carr not to be his quarterback. And then
yeah.
it comes out during the week of the combine when the Saints do their little side press conference and media scrum that he was coming back. We'll see. Like we still don't know what's going to happen with his contract. So we don't know if that's a thing where maybe Mickey Loomis convinced Kellen Moore for Derek Carr to stay, but we know that Derek Carr doesn't like taking pay cuts. The Raiders tried to get him a pay cut like right after he signed that contract extension. He didn't take it. He got cut. He told Captain Terrell that he wasn't going to take a pay cut like at like the lockers when she didn't even ask about a pay cut. So it's come out like he's not going to take a pay cut. Is he magically all of a sudden going to take a pay cut? We'll see. And if he doesn't, then I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean that $51 million cap hit is quite a large number for someone.
Yes,
the ilk of Derek Carr.
14 and 13.
Yeah. I mean, he played, I guess, relatively well not compared to the top 5-10 quarterbacks, but those 10 games he played last year, I mean, it was okay.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Not bad. Not great, but
he's a player that I feel like if you don't every single game and you strictly go by the stats, like, oh yeah, like Derek Carr, like he's good. Like you really have to watch every game to really kind of understand, like, because like I guess it's like you take away like the deep shots to Rashid and the deep shots to MBS, like what really does the Derek Carr offense really have to offer?
A lot of throws out of bounds, 40 yards in there.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah.
It's hard. That's not a sustainable offense for any team.
Yeah. I mean, I know Kellen Moore is being brought in as like the offensive guru that could solve this, but I mean, I don't know who could solve Derek Carr to fully unlock him, in my opinion.
John Gruden, Josh McDaniel, Pete Carmichael, Clint Kubiak, Greg Roman? No, not Greg Roman. There's been so many. Like at this point, like he's been in the league 12 years. It just
it's not going to just magically change and drastically.
He is who he is.
Yeah, I'd be curious if Pittsburgh makes a call.
It's just like, and the thing with Carr is like, I think you're gonna have to like, you might have. If I was Saints, and this is not what I heard, but like they might have to incentivize a team to trade. Like it's like, oh, you like because of the contract, it's like, hey, I might have to attach like a fourth to get him be traded out. Because everyone talks about like his contract and how difficult it is to cut. Like if they make him a post June 1st cut, yes, he's gonna have debt money of 25. I think it's 25 debt money cap hit this year and a 25 debt money cap next year. But they gain $30 million in cap space post June 1st. That's significant for a team that is always pressed against the cap like the Saints are. For sure.
I mean, either way, it's going to be interesting. If they keep him, that's going to be a fun storyline. If they get rid of him, that's going to be a fun story. Just I'm here. I want them to get rid of him just so Kellen Moore can start anew with his own quarterback. Just not even have this first year to even waste basically with him.
Yes. Yeah.
But who knows? It's the Saints. It's Mickey Loomis,
It is. It is.
So kind of going along those. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, we get answers soon, though. Like, that's the good thing. Yeah. Like, we'll know in about a week. Like, we should know probably by next week of what really the true answer of that's gonna be.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of along those same lines. I mean, he is getting older. What's your thoughts on like this aging roster? They have so many pieces that are, either old or not always healthy, and then you combine the two. So, like, how would you tackle that problem? Do you just cut them all? Do you just try to get more draft picks? What's your thoughts on that whole situation?
I mean, I said this on our podcast. A good friend close to the Saints told me if they were to post June 1st, Derek Carr, cut Jamal Williams, which they already did, cut Cam. That one will be tough, but cut Cam, cut Colin Sanders, and then there was another one in there. I think there were, I'm blanking on who the other player was.
Taysom Hill with that ACL.
It wasn't Taysom,
Okay.
but it was another player that I'm blanking on. There was one more player. They could have, and this is post June 1st, so they would have to still get cap compliant. They still have to restructure contracts that they started doing. They hit that Eric McCoy day. They could have after June 1st upwards of $40 million in cap space for a team that is
for the Saints.
For the Saints, right? So this team has oftentimes, and it's a Mickey Loomis problem, is this team has it's been on my radar that the team has been awful at scouting themselves. They think that they're closer than they actually are, and it has led to them thinking that players are better than they actually are, whether it's like a Pete Warner. Like, I still don't know why Pete Warner got that extension, or
let Bond go.
Like Zach Bond go, let Caden Ellis go.
Yeah.
Or they tend to have a loyalty to players, and loyalty is great, and I get it, but loyalty to players where they're older and maybe they should have let that player go, like Cam, like DeMario. Then you end up in the situation where you are. So if it's me, like, I'm ripping the Band-Aid. Like, the players that I can let go, I can let go. And yes, the thing is, you're going to create holes. There's going to be holes. But I'm not the biggest fan of his, and I think that's going to be one of the big struggles on the team in 2025. Like, you hired Brandon Staley, right? Like, figure it out. Like, there's and the good thing with draft is if you need a linebacker, if you need an edge rusher, if you need defensive linemen, tons in this draft. Go get some. Figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, they have to take a step take 2 steps back at this point, just to reset. I mean, you're in the NFC South, so I feel like they feel like they can compete and win the NFC South, but what's that going to get you? The first round of the playoffs?
Yeah, it's also too, it's in me and my dude Ryan on our podcast all the time, like, the rest of the NFC South is getting better. Like, it's like, it works to a degree, but like Bryce Young improved markedly after he beat the Saints, and then just went on a heater. And Tampa Bay continues to be extremely annoying. And with the Falcons, Michael Penix, we just saw like a glimpse of what he could do. Like, what are the Saints doing to show that they can improve? I will say one thing that gives me a little defensively, but I've heard rumbles, and I've heard this is from sources.
Yeah,
I do get the sense that they do really want to get juice on the offense for this offseason. Getting tight, Kellen Moore likes tight ends. They want to add tight ends. I don't know whether that's I think that would lean draft. Think they want to add running back, so they Jamal Williams. I know. So that is exciting because it's been needed for seasons now. Like, so sure. that is positive, but they really need to let whatever Kellen Moore's vision is, kind of like you were just saying, right? Like, if Derek Carr is not a Kellen Moore guy, then Kellen Moore needs to be able to, whatever his vision is, if that's Jackson Dart, that's Shedeur Sanders, whoever it is, if he wants to roll with Rattler for a year and maybe he has his eye on 2026, let him put it together.
I agree,
but
100%.
you can't have your hands in the cookie jar, and you can't, like, it's just, you have to have a vision, and there just hasn't been one. I know what the vision has been. The vision has been like, let's try to at least try to compete for the NFC South, and they haven't been able to evaluate their talent.
Yeah. I feel like this conversation that we're having about age, like it's been the same conversation for the past 2-3 seasons. Where it's the same thing. Should we cut now and reset? And it's still, let's just add some void years to everyone and move along.
Keep it moving.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But so what's your thoughts on like if the ideal draft scenario for like maybe like first and second round picks? Who would be your pick of everyone if you just had your choice, your absolute choice?
Ooh, that's good. Dang, that's a really good one. Okay. Ideally, at 9, I would say Mason Graham at 9. I think he's, if not the best player in the draft, I think he's 1B. I don't know if he would fall. Another player I really like this as like a backup plan. I really love Jalen Walker from Georgia. I had a chance to talk to him, ask him a question at the combine. Super engaging personality, and just like his tape is fantastic. I think he could fit in that Brandon Staley defense like just perfectly. So those are the two players I would. Which is funny because the team needs a lot. I'm a big Genty fan, but he would probably. I would probably go Genty of Jalen Walker, honestly. But my number one player would probably be Mason Graham, and then round 2. I don't think he'd be there because I do think he's going round 1. But if you give me the perfect draft, I would go Mason Graham at 9, and then Jackson Dart at 40. But I think Dart's going.
Yeah, I think he's just steadily moving up right now.
Yeah. So give you another player. I'm gonna go double Mason. Mason Graham at 9, Mason Taylor at 40.
That would be great for the Saints. I agree with that for sure. I mean, the good thing about that, you have your ideal draft. The good thing is it seems like everybody's mock draft is like in the media, there's no consensus almost. Like it seems like it's just everywhere to me.
It is.
It's just like no one knows to an extent,
It's a weird, I won't say it's a weird draft. So but there are 2 players. I'm not gonna spill too many beans, but Mason Graham is a player that the Saints I'll just say that there's a player that they would love to fall to. And he's a weird player because the NFL is weird when it comes to elite defensive tackles in the draft. Sometimes they just fall. It happens like a lot. Vita Vea fell. Ed Oliver fell. If you go back, like Haloti Naha fell to like 12. Byron Murphy last year fell to like 16 to the Seahawks. So like defensive tackles tend to fall, even like, and those are like super athletic defensive tackles. Mason Graham, as much as I love him, he's not gonna test like an Ed Oliver. He's not gonna test like like a Byron Murphy. So NFL teams might overthink him. I think Will Johnson, another player where if you had put up a mock draft prior to the season, everyone had Will Johnson going top 5, right? Everyone had Will Johnson 100% going top 5, but he gets injured. And, what I heard coming out the combine is it doesn't sound like his Michigan coaching staff is going to give him glowing reviews. They're going to show him a little bit. So for him, a lot's going to really depend on his Michigan Pro Day, like how and how fast he runs his 40. So it's just it is all over the place. So I think the Saints and the player here that's kind of like building a lot of buzz right now, that the potentially a player that could be the pick at 9 that's kind of built buzz of like the last 2 to 3 weeks is Tyler Warren. I can say, and I said this on WWL earlier this week when I was on there. They like Tyler Warren. I think as the process goes on, the way I would word is that they really like him right now, Would it get to the point where they love him over certain players that they love right now? We'll see. But
Yeah.
I have my own thoughts on Tyler Warren as a prospect, but that's neither here nor there.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I mean, it's gonna be. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like it's just. I'm so oblivious to almost it seems to who's aware. Like it's just so many scenarios, which is good for me. I enjoy it just as
Yeah,
a
for
fan
sure.
of football in general.
Yes.
It's the unknown, you know.
Yes.
So
It'll make for a very fun draft. And
yeah,
like one storyline, and we'll see how it plays out. Like the Shedeur Sanders thing is interesting because obviously the Titans, you know, what they do with the one pick will be interesting. If they trade it, if they stay there, if they stay there, I'm pretty sure if they stay at 1, I think they take Cam Ward.
Yeah.
And then the 2 teams become super interesting for the Shedeur. Well, technically it's 3, but is Cleveland at 2, Giants at 3, and Raiders at 6.
Outside
He's
that,
there.
there's no one to the Saints, right?
Right.
Yeah.
If he's there at 9, and I know for 100% of fact that the Raiders want to get like a veteran quarterback in free agency. So if they go out and get Sam Darnold, they're not going to invest first. Like they're not going to invest the 6th overall pick on Shedeur Sanders. So if for whatever reason he's there at 9, which seemed silly, you know, a couple of weeks ago, there's a strong chance that the Saints pull the trigger, which would be, I mean, I think they should. Well, for conversation, but like, if that's who's Kellen Moore's guy is, you got to do it. You got to do it.
Yeah, I mean, especially the other thing about getting him in the first round is you get that fair option on him too. Which I mean,
you do.
So yeah, I agree. You 100% can't pass him up if he gets 2-9 somehow. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
Sure.
Last thing is, I guess we can put these two together. Like, what's one thing that you could see being the biggest positive of this season, along with like what's the best outcome that's realistic for the season? I guess those things can kind of go hand in hand.
Seeing that Kellen Moore really is a good offensive mind.
Yeah.
That would be the best outcome. Now, I say offensive mind, but I didn't say be a good offensive mind. But like for me as a fan, like there's a difference between being a good offensive mind and being like a good head coach, right?
Yeah,
like
for sure.
So like and the thing with him is still gonna be that whole like not to be cliche, but like does he kind of have that dog in him? And like that's kind of something that's kind of being questioned right now, right? He wanted, the word was he wanted Card gone initially, and maybe he kind of got him to change his mind. The best outcome for me as a fan is knowing that he has that alpha in him. Like, he's a great Carlo. Yes, he's a good offensive mind, but he can stand on his 10 toes, and he has that personality where he can lead a team and do all that. That's the best outcome, because him just being a good play caller is fine and dandy, but if he can't have that presence, not just to the team, but to stand up to like the GM, if he has a conviction or something, then nothing else is really going to matter. Yeah.
It's kind of like the opposite of, what I guess, I don't know, I can't speak to like the culture as much with Brandon Staley, but you see how well he did the defensive coordinator versus a head coach,
For sure.
Just like very topically looking at him,
Yep.
So maybe he reverts to his DC ways where he was a great defensive coordinator and not, not worry about all the other extracurriculars as being a head coach. So I mean, that's the one thing I look forward to seeing what he can do as a defensive coordinator. But I don't know. We'll see. If there's any way that the Saints could win the NFC South?
No.
Fair enough.
Hold on. Let me walk that back. if they like, okay, let's say in the draft let's say Shadur falls to 9, or let's draft Jackson Dart at 9, and then they overload, like, let's say they good get a good tight end,
Mm-hmm.
get a good running back, and it all kind of just comes together. And they probably also need like at least one good defensive player, whether that's interior, whether that's an edge rusher, whatever.
Yeah.
And just let's say it all comes together with like good coaching of like kind of not to the degree, because the Denver defense was like already like coming and had some great, but it all kind of had the perfect marriage of where, and I'm not or whatever freaking compare Sean Payton, but just I want to just use the analogy of kind of how Sean Payton was kind of able to bring Bo Nix and kind of bring him around slowly last year, and then he built upon Bo Nix slowly.
Yeah.
I think that that would be the recipe for success of like Kellen Moore having a young rookie quarterback, or let's maybe he's Rattler, whoever, right? Maybe it could be Derek Carr, but like if Derek Carr, like they're not winning the NFC South. Like I'm not dumb, but that's like the route is kind of like surprising, and like like if it's like Jackson Dart having like a dang good rookie season, or Shedeur Sanders having a dang good rookie season, and them getting contributions from a good rookie draft class, because that's they need to draft starters, like certified good starters. That would be the way where I could see them potentially winning the NFC South.
Fair. All right. Well, I appreciate you jumping on here with me. Tell everybody a little bit about you, kind of like what you're covering. It's Saints. I know it's Saints in general, and where they can find you at.
Yeah. I am on Twitter. Me and my best friend Ryan and Pat, we were That Boy Wolf on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at Ask Me to Stay 323. It's a mouthful. We have a podcast, a Saints podcast called the Saints Block Party Podcast. We've had it. It'll be 5 years as of April. And it's a Saints podcast, and we just try to be as authentic and honest as we can. We've been very blessed and honored. We've been able to cover the Senior Bowl twice now. Last week I was able to cover the combine for our podcast for the first time ever. So we've just been steadily building it and everything. So definitely check us out. We're on YouTube. We are on Apple, Spotify, all those podcast mediums. So you give us a follow on Twitter, X, Instagram, TikTok. Not really on Twitch. Yeah, just the big main ones we're on. So give us a shout out. Follow us if you're not blocked by some of us, might be, but reach out to us. We have a good time. We have a really amazing community. There's nothing like it. But yeah, give us a follow and shout out. And just talk Saints, but also don't take football too seriously. That's something we try to try to emotionally disconnect yourself, because at the end of the day, it's just football. It's just a game. Like, it's not that serious.
Yeah, definitely. I've checked out for myself. It's definitely some great content, especially if you're a Saints fan. So let me finding you and asking you to be on here, honestly. So yeah, again, I appreciate it, and I'll catch up with you later.
All right, thanks, Shay. Have a good one, bro.
Big shout out to Adam for joining me for that interview. Definitely some great insight from a true Saints fan and someone who is very involved with the Saints organization, what's going on within the roster and everything within that building. He knows the stuff for sure. So we will now really into the deep dive of this Saints breakdown. So like one of the first things I do after I go through the coaching staff changes is talk about the additions for the team. Well, thus far, they have really no additions. Free agency has really kicked in. So I do a mock draft. So we will look at the mock draft real quick. and we will discuss their areas of need with this mock draft. Let's see. Yes, all right. So this is through the draft simulator. So different things could happen each time you go through it. This is what happened the one and only time I did it. You know, I take what I think is best available for the Saints. We'll break it down as we go through. So at number 9 overall, I'm taking Mike Green, the edge out of Marshall. This guy, you saw him at the Senior Bowl. You saw the videos of him just running over Josh Connerly. Just going through him seemed like it was going through a 5th grader pretty much. And he went home. He showed what he needed to show, and he said, "This is enough of this. I'll see you basically at the pro day." But this guy's really fast on the get off. He can transition into a power rusher. I mean, there's a lot of ways that the Saints could go at 9. They could take Tyler Warren if he's still there. They could go defense because they have a lot of holes on this team. So I have them taking Mike Green in the first round. Second round, have them taking Shavon Ravel, the cornerback out of ECU. Got injured, but this guy is 6'3", very fast. He's very physical at the catch point. I mean, this guy, he would be possibly or very likely one from day one if they were able to get him in the second round with the 40th overall pick. Then going on to the third round, 71st pick, I have him taking Quinshawn Judkins out of Ohio State, one half of that backfield. He's more of the downhill runner. I could see him being a 1-2 punch with Alvin Kamara. You know, you have more athleticism portion with Alvin Kamara, and then having that more of this type with him. Continuing into the third round, I have them taking somewhat of a hometown player in Mason Taylor, tight end from LSU. This guy, when you watch him, he has top end speed. He's just all on tight end. He can pass and run block with the best of them. And we know Kellen Moore loves his tight ends in his system. So wouldn't be surprised if they get one within the first 3 rounds for sure. Taking Sanker, the safety in the 4th round, stocking up on defense. There's a lot of holes, so you got a lot of spots to fill. This mock draft at Jackson Dart falling to pick 130, I feel like there's no way on God's green earth that he makes it to pick 130. But if in some miraculous way he does, they have to take him. I really don't foresee this happening, but they got to take someone, and we will get into the Derek Carr situation of all this as we continue on. But I mean, I don't know if we'll get past round 2, honestly. And then just ending the draft with picks 6 and 7. Again, we're just filling so many holes in the Saints roster. It's an aging roster. We'll discuss that and more as we go. But have them taking a guard out of Minnesota and a defensive interior player out of South Carolina. So no additions. So there's subtractions. This is their depth chart. And they probably have a lot of subtractions they need to add to this list, honestly. But first off, if you look at the chart now, the green ones are the ones that are free agents, pending free agents. They could re-sign them, but those are the ones that will be testing the market per se. First look at, and I see Juwan Johnson. I mean, this guy, he was ranked 28th overall out of qualifying tight ends in 2024. His grade was mostly skewed because he cannot pass block. He's out there to catch the ball, and that's it. You know, I mean, he can catch the ball, and that's his thing. Fewest starts, I mean, in a while, but he did have a career high in yards. He had 508 receiving yards for this depleted Saints team on offense. We'll get into the injuries as we continue, but he was basically the focal point with no healthy weapons around him. You know, the projection for him to come back is currently 3 years, $29 million. I can see this both ways. Like I said earlier, Kellen Moore loved tight ends in his system, but you have so many holes that you could spend that money elsewhere to try to replenish what you need. And in my opinion, there's so many valuable tight ends coming out of this 2025 draft. I would much rather take a tight end that's a rookie. Whenever Juwan Johnson, was he good? He was good. I mean, you could easily get that same amount of production from a handful of rookies in this draft at a much lower price. Secondly, Chase Young, ranked 52nd amongst DNs. That's out of 118, so middle of the pack. 5.5 sacks and 8 tackles for loss last year. I mean, not the worst, but not really ideal. He's projected currently at 2 years, $36 million. again, this is a D-line loaded class. So are you wanting to pay him around that amount to bring him back for mid-level production? No, said I. But, I mean, that projection is partly due to the fact that he had, I believe, the 6 pressures, 73 quarterback pressures, but he had one of the lowest rates out of the top 10 pressure players amongst edge rushers. He had 73 pressures, but I believe it's just a 1.2 sack rate. So he was able to get to the quarterback, but he wasn't able to complete the process of getting a sack. So a big difference. Pressures do good, but sacks do better. Another one, looking at that defense, is Paulson Adebo. He had a down year compared to what he had in 23. He did have 3 interceptions, allowed just a 72 passer rating, but he was better year before last. So he is one that I feel like if you're going to re-sign one of these pending free agents, it would be the one that I say bring back. Yeah. A lot of pain in the state of Louisiana watching the Saints over the last 2 years. Another one that's going to be off the books, not really much of a contributor, is Willie Gay, taking a few million off of the cap, and the cap situation is a horrible one. So him being off the books will help some. Umadi is another one. He was ranked near the bottom 4th of qualifying cornerbacks. But other than that, they're not really losing a lot of players. When you look at the other teams that I've broken down so far, I mean, some of those other teams are losing upwards of 2 players. I mean, they're not really losing anyone that's a contributor on this team. The last one that I see on this list is Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He's the one that came in mid-year. He's projected at 1 year, a little over $2 million to bring him back. He's another one outside of Paulson Adebo that I think they should consider bringing back, because he can take the top off of that. He can just open up the offense. He can stretch the field. He's got the speed. He made big-time catches even when Derek Carr wasn't even out there on the field. I mean, if they're not drafting someone of the same ilk and his type of pedigree of a player, and that the profile that he fits, I feel like they do need to bring him back to shore up this wide receiver group, tight end group, weapons in general, whenever they've had so many injuries in the past. That's their subtractions. Like I said, it wasn't many. So let's look at their cap situation. Like a summary of some of the things that I'm talking about that I get into more detail. This has updated some since I made this within the last day. This is due to the Eric McCoy structure. They're not negative 46 million in cap space. They're now negative 38. So they're just slowly but surely making their way to that mark that they have to make within the week, I believe, to get on to be applicable where they're under the cap. You have to be under the cap. So that dead cap, I mean, 50 million, it's the 3rd in the league. So they are just, I mean, we've known what's been going on with the Saints for the last few years. They sign a player, they let him age. They say, we're going to make one more run at it this year in the NFC South. We want to compete. We want to be that team that gets to the playoffs and loses in the first round, because we can't do any better than that. And that's what they keep doing. They keep paying these players. They keep adding all these void years where they're basically not applying their salary hit to the cap this season. They won't even be with the team in years to come, and they'll still be basically on their books. But with the dead cap, they have 50 million. This is for people that are players that's not even on the team anymore. Marshawn Lattimore, who they traded away last year to the Commanders, he's going to have almost a $32 million dead cap hit this year. Michael Thomas, still having him on the salary, basically. He has a $9 million dead cap. And then James has a $7 million dead cap. So, like I said, the salary cap situation is probably the only one you could argue in the league that is equally as bad or maybe worse is the Browns and Deshaun. But they already committed. They restructured him again yesterday, and they have already freed up a lot of cap space for their team. The Saints are in maybe a worse situation because a lot of their money is to aging players. So as we continue with this, talking about this cap situation, they owe so much money. One thing we look at, say Buffalo, they're paying Josh Allen a lot. The Ravens are paying Lamar a lot. The Chiefs are paying Mahomes a lot. You got top tier players. The Saints, on the other hand, are paying top tier money to mid-level players. First and foremost, everybody's the fan favorite in New Orleans, in Louisiana. Derek Carr, a lot of mixed feelings on him. He will hold a $51 million cap hit in 2025 as of today. Could restructure that. Could do a lot to make it seem a lot better. There's a lot of things you could do. I mean, there's been the rumors, is he even going to be the quarterback for Kellen Moore's system? I'm going to discuss that more in a moment, but let's just look at the cap situation with him. So you can designate him as post 6-1 June 1st release. And to me, that's only feasible unless you're a trade partner. But no, I don't think anyone's taking his contract. I mean, the Saints may have to add a pick, late round pick for someone to take that. A majority of that contract off their hands, not really sure. But if you go 6-1 designation where you release him after June 1st, you can split that dead cap to a 2-year dead cap of $21 million and $28 million over the next 2 years. And you would save $30 million this year. You look at 2026, $51 million cap hit this year. He's $61 million next year. I know the salary cap keeps going up every year, but it's not going up enough to pay these numbers for Derek Carr. So as we continue, I mean, like I said, you could trade for him. You could trade for Derek Carr. Is it going to happen? I'm not really sure. Adam and I discussed it a little bit. He said, Indy. I say maybe Pittsburgh. I feel like Pittsburgh, they don't tend to go for top level quarterbacks. Derek Carr is not a top tier quarterback. They love to have those almost like projects that, we're mid-level. We'll put anybody out there and this defense will carry us. He fits the mold for that. A little bit more than what they normally pay. But if they trade him pre-6-1, that's more ideal. And then Kellen Moore could bring in the rookie that he wants to build offense around. Take the dead cap. We've seen the Broncos do that to Russell Wilson. What's going to happen in Atlanta with Kirk Cousins? He's a $40 million backup this year. I mean, Kellen Moore has an extremely bad team. Does he want to just go ahead and wash his hands of their car and get rid of him by any means necessary? Bring in maybe Justin Fields, maybe. I don't know. Just someone new to start running the offense that he wants to run in New Orleans. He has already hinted at the fact that Carr was not going to be his quarterback. So I'm curious to see how this plays out. I mean, it's all smoke screen. We see the things that's going on in Cleveland. Myles Garrett, Andrew Berry says he's not going to trade him. Myles Garrett says, I'm out no matter what. Money does not matter. I just want to play for a ring. So, I mean, if he goes to Pittsburgh, what are we looking at? 2 mid-round picks? He does have a no-trade clause, so you also have to convince Derek Carr to get out the city, which, I mean, I feel like a large number of Saints fans would be ready and willing to help him pack his bags, say it nicely. Continuing on with these salaries that we're paying for mid-level players, we got Cam Jordan, who has a $20 million cap hit this year. Are they going to cut him? I mean, if we're being unbiased as Saints fans, if you're a Saints fan, I know he's been a fan favorite for the last decade, but he's going to be 36 years old once the season starts. He's only had 6 sacks, 10 tackles for loss in the last 2 seasons combined. I feel like it's time to just pull the plug. I mean, probably a bad terminology for him, older in the NFL, but fans will be upset, but it's a move that I feel has to be made. We can't just continue to slowly pull on one thing at a time, one thing this year, one thing next. Just hit the hard reset button. Potential for sure for this team. That's why I currently have them ranked 28th. There's a lot of issues on this roster and in the franchise all around. Taysom Hill. He's an $18 million cap hit this year. He's 35 years old. I know he doesn't really play as a 35-year-old, but he's coming off that ACL injury. So you're going to be taking an $18 million cap hit. Still got the ACL injury. It's a pre-6-1 release. $17 million dead cap, just $500,000 saved, so it doesn't really do anything for you. But if he's a post-6-1 release, you split that number. It's $8 million this year, $10 million next year, and that's split over 2 years. But you save $10 million in 2025. Again, a valuable member of the team, maybe the locker room, kind of like Cam Jordan, coming off an injury and at the age that he is and the money that he is being owed is going to be a cap hit this year. He's got to go. Got to reset. So it's going to be a common theme with this team. Demario Davis is owed $12 million, but I mean, I think he's still got enough that you can reason out keeping him on this roster for sure. Ryan Ramczyk, he missed 2024 due to the injuries. $12 million cap hit. What's going on with him? What are we getting out of him this year? What's going to be the true Ramczyk of this year? And this roster, I'm telling you, there were not many free agents, but there's a lot of casualties that could be taking place as we go farther and farther depth chart. Tyrann Mathieu, he was ranked 65 out of 98 safeties in the past season. Not terrible, not the best with 2024, but he's $11 million cap hit. 33 years old. The theme of this roster, we just continue having the players that are up in age when you're talking about NFL terms. A post 6-1 cut for him is the only way to save. That'd be $6 million dead cap this year, $7 million next year. Save almost $5 million this year. So there's a lot of ways that they would still have dead cap, but they can also save money. Depends on what Kellen Moore's vision and how much Mickey Loomis decides to listen to this round. Is it just going to be whatever Mickey decides goes? We keep trying to, I say we, I'm just saying Saints fans in general. Do we continue trying to be a 9-10 win team and scrape into the playoffs? NFC South is getting better, but I mean, it's not the top division in the league by any means. But I mean, this is not a Super Bowl aspiring team. Like, no one expects, they probably have plus 20,000 right now, or maybe worse, to make the Super Bowl. Chase Young, I said he's a free agent. That's true. He also has a $9 million cap hit due to void years that I've spoken on earlier with Saints' continued mismanagement of contracts with these players. Just tack it on. You know, we got to go for that 9-win season. We'll pay for this in 2032. Juwan Johnson, free agent, $6.5 million cap each year, void years again. And these 2025 is not the only year for void years for them. So a lot of struggles with the cap. The cap is the problem for this team. Again, some could argue Cleveland is worse off than them. No way. I mean, Cleveland's problem is more focused on like one player, you know, with Deshaun Watson and all his guaranteed money. The Saints have just a multitude of issues, one player after another. It's so many positions. So continuing on, let's bring the depth chart back up. We will talk about the strengths of this team. I mean, there's a few, nothing to write home about for sure. There's no more Dennis Allen. You can consider that a strength. But outside of that, what truly is a strength? You know, some teams, you look at the Eagles, the run game, that front four, there's nothing that is as demonstrative or need that much attention paid to on this roster, like those types of teams. By PFF metrics, they had no category that they ranked higher than 11th in. They did rank 11th in run and run block. So let's say that was the best thing that they had going on this year. Is Derek Carr's strength? Depends on where you're at on that side of the fence. He only played 10 games last year. There was things that you saw. If you just look at the numbers, like we discussed earlier, you look at the numbers on him, his numbers can make you feel like he's a top 10, top 15 for sure quarterback. Reading them off right here. 5-5 last year in 10 games he played. So they did not win a game outside of whenever Derek Carr did not start. Almost 68% passing completion, 214 passing yards per game, 101 passer rating, 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 2.8% sack rate, almost 8 air yards per attempt. That sounds good to me. It sounds like a quarterback you can continue to build around. But then you watch the game, you actually pay attention to what's going on, you're going to feel different, or most will, I'm sure. You compare that to what they had without Derek Carr, 7, 55% completion percentage. So we dropped from 68 to 55, 215 pass yards per game for Derek Carr down to 192. Touchdown interception ratio of 6 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Went from a 2.8% sack rate all the way up to a 9% sack rate. How much is that? Is the QB induced? Be the judge. Dropped from almost 8 yards per air yards per attempt down to 5.2 air yards per attempt. And that passer rating went from 101 down to 66. So almost day and night with the, again, health is a part of building a NFL roster. I mean, another strength, having a competent offensive line in the building and a change in the defensive locker room. Could you argue the weapons that we see here are strengths? You have Chris Olave, you have Rashid Shaheed, you have Derek Carr that's already been mentioned, Alvin Kamara. But like I said, those players are good. If they cannot be the best ability is availability. If they're not on the field, they're doing you no good. You're just paying them to rehab. Because whenever we saw what happened in 2024, whenever they get injured, we don't want to see who's behind them. Olave led all wideouts with 400, right at 400 receiving yards. That is terrible. That shows you the quality of the wideouts they had and the health of the wideouts that they had. He finished the season with 32 receptions, 401 touchdown. That's 8 games. Still top receiver on the team. Juwan Johnson led the team in receiving yards. I mean, you would be, what would we say, top 15 tight end, arguably. I don't even know if he's that, but he led him in receiving yards. This is a problem. Like if your tight end is the one that's leading you, now he's probably gone. The leading receivers, 2 tight ends and a running back, were top 3 receivers on this team. So again, issues all around. Talking about health, Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, they played a full season. They have not played a full season in the last 3 seasons. So health is an issue. Alvin Kamara, solid season, almost broke 1,000 yards, had 950 yards on the ground. Jamal Williams, who's now off the building. Mims and Kendre Miller, they all combined had 950. Those 3 combined had 382. So this roster, even though they may have some talent that you could talk about and say, hey, we're good, we're great. Once you get behind those talented aging players, you see all the holes. That's where the problems start to come to show. It's like an offensive line. The weakest point of the offensive line is the player. If you have one great player and one bad one, that bad one's still gonna make the offensive line look terrible. So is what it is. Not many strengths on this team. We go into weaknesses. I mean, we've hit on a lot of this already. I mean, the Saints. Man, it's just all over. You could argue that almost every position on this team could be arguably a weakness compared to other teams. Again, this is why they're ranked 28th. They do have some I wouldn't say top tier talent, but they just have some issues that come along, a lot of baggage with that talent. The cap has them strapped for what they can do to rebuild. The offense, if we look at the whole season, again, we have to take in consideration, yeah, Derek Carr did play, but he was injured, not on the field. The rest of the league's not going to see that as an excuse. So overall, whole season, the offense was awful, basically. 18.9 points per game, which was 24th. I say the offense, but then you would just transition straight to the defense. Worse than the offense. 380 yards per game allowed, which was 30th, 32 teams, so 30th in that. 4.9 yards per carry allowed, 30th. 30th in EPA per run. That's expected points added per run. And they allowed, on average, or no, altogether, 0.08 expected points allowed per run. So every run, 0.08 positive. Not good. You want to be negative. 30th in stuff rate. If you're not familiar with what stuff rate is, those are the percentage of plays that are stopped at the line of scrimmage or that are behind the line of scrimmage, a tackle for loss. So they were 30th in that. Want to guess what their percentage was? Stuff rate was right below 12%. So that means out of every 8 plays, 1 out of every 8, they're getting someone at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage. Again, not ideal to say the least. They gave over a half yard over expected on every rush play on average. So you take the whole season, every time the opponent ran the ball, the Saints allowed 1.5 feet every time more than what they should have based on the opponent and who was on the field. So you look at that, and I mean, you do that over the entire season, that obviously adds up and leads to where we're at with the defense being as terrible as they are. or were, still are, whatever, how you want to do that. Again, we're looking at how bad they are. It's every category. You look at every category, there is nothing that just stands out on this defense as what you can say, hey, you know, we may be bad in a lot of these areas, but we got this going. In rush attempts, I rewatched the last 2 weeks of the Saints games. You see a lot of runs to the outside of this defense. So I was like, let me dive into that, see where they rank with that. 30th in rush attempts outside the box. People, they know what, yards allowed, outside the box. Do whatever. Back to the offense. 7th worst in EPA per play on first down. So basically what that's telling you is, hey, we're not getting no yards on first down. We're putting ourselves behind the sticks on 2nd and 3rd down. You could argue even with Carr, but with all these injuries, again, when you're behind the sticks, they don't have playmakers to recover from where the hole that they're putting themselves in. Continuing with that offense, they were last in EPA per play on 3rd and long. It's just when they get behind, they cannot come back. There's just so many the weaknesses. We could go on all night about what's wrong with this team. It's like another thing you think about going back to the defense. They were 28th in takeaways. In yards per game allowed. So they couldn't stop the run. They couldn't stop the pass. The problem with being 28th in pass yards per game allowed is the fact that they were behind in so many games. So the teams that they're playing shouldn't even really be passing on them. So there should be less pass attempts against the Saints because they were always trailing, but yet they still gave up the 5th most yards per game in the air. Just 1 takeaway per game, bottom 3rd of the league. It's problems no matter where you look. Tackling, another issue. They were last in the NFL in yards allowed after the catch over expected. Remember I was talking about the rush yards allowed over expected. They were giving up 1.5 feet every run play on average, extra than what they should have been. They were last in the league in yards after the catch over expected at 480, more than what they should have allowed for the entire season. I'm done with weaknesses. Weaknesses continue to be a thing on this team. So, a theme with the Saints is they have no depth behind these stars. Let's run through it again. Refresh your memory with what we have with these aging players that are not top-tier talent. If someone gets hurt, it's game over. You got Tim Hill, 35 years old. Next tight end on the roster, Foster Moreau. Do you want him to be your starter? I don't think so. Derek Carr, 34 years old. We've seen what happens whenever he gets hurt. Jamal Williams, he's gone. He was 31, but he's gone. Alvin Kamara, 30. 30's not the best when you're talking about running backs. Talking about quarterbacks, 30 is good. Prime years. Running backs, not so much. Derrick Henry's trying to argue that with his age and how he's still performing. But Alvin Kamara is 30 years old. Kendre Miller, he didn't show any promise to excite me if Alvin Kamara goes down. So if they go get another running back in the draft, great for Saints fans. Demario Davis, 36 years old. He's still playing great. He was already the oldest linebacker last year in the league, so he's just going to continue that. The other linebackers outside of him, E. Werner, who was ranked 28th, so solid, solid secondary linebacker. And Orji, who ranked 67th if he was qualifying. So they don't even have anyone that can step up to fill that void at this time. The only person that's defeated is Father Time, and it's eventually coming for Demario Davis. Cam Jordan, 36 years old. We talked about him earlier. They do have Carl Granderson, who did have a year. Brian Brzee was also okay. He was more of a pass rusher, defensive interior player. He did have 8 sacks. Overall, against the run, out of 219 players, he was ranked 218th. So when Cam goes down, this defensive line struggles. Chase Young is gone. Isaiah Foskey is also not living up to the expectations of what they expected for him, taking him as early as they did. Tyrann Mathieu, 33 years old, 3 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles. Again, after him, decline on this team. When you look at this team as a whole, only 2 players on the defense ranked in the top 20 at their position. Out of the entire defensive roster, they had just 2 that was in the top 20 of their position. And one of them's 36 years old and Demario Davis. So it's almost like they really don't have anything as of now and have anything to build towards into the future. So, I mean, it is one problem after another, basically. The offensive line, we talked about the pass blocking issues earlier. Quarterback play help them. The rookie that they took last year, I mean, they need a left guard too. I mean, the rookie gave up 39 pressures. He gave up 6 sacks. It was not a great year for him. Enough about the weaknesses. They're making me weak at this point. So the outlook for this team just is a more generalized look. I think they need to bring back BS. He's a key point of this offense whenever they don't really have a lot going on. The draft may help a lot. We'll see. Can everyone stay healthy? At this, I just want to read the defensive starters going into next year. Carl Granderson, Brian Brzee, Colin Sanders, Cam Jordan, Pete Werner, Demario Davis. When you look at the secondary, you have Rico Payton, Jordan Howden, Tyrann Mathieu, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Alante Taylor. Alante Taylor, we will talk on him in a moment, but this is not this is not something you want to go brag about to anyone that is a fan of another team. Like, it doesn't look good. Nathan Shepard also in there, but I mean, it's just nothing outstanding. The main point that I want to make about the Saints is the fact I feel, if you're asking my opinion, they need to hit that reset button, hit it quickly. They need to get younger. I mean, this is the same conversation we've had for going on 3-4 years, maybe. Oh, the Saints are aging, but they're going to push it. They're going to try to go for it one more time, see if we can push the issue here and continue to build this roster. We're going to pay our old players. We're going to keep them here. Get younger. I mean, Jesus, just stop adding void years at minimum. Reset. I mean, there's so many void years. Stop trying to compete in this NFC South that is Tampa Bay is the best team. We'll see what Michael Penix does in year 2. But Tampa Bay is not a team that's striking fear into the rest of the NFL. They're not like a Super Bowl contender. When you look at them, I mean, it's not like the Saints, even if they become the best team in the NFC South, good for them. They will probably lose the wild card round. They'll probably be the 4th seed, have a home game, and that be that. I don't know. It's this mindset of losing in the first round is just not it for a team continuing to build or continuing into the future trying to build, I should say. If I had my choice as GM, I would go hit that reset button, go sign some second level, second tier, second line free agents. One that don't cost you a lot of money. You don't need to break the bank. You've already broken the bank. Brinks truck broken down at this point with the negative salary cap and all the dead cap that you have going into this franchise. If you cut some of these players I spoke on earlier, you can get someone with the offensive line, the likes of Kevin Zeitler from Detroit. James Daniels didn't play last year, but he had a promising year in 2023. They're projected at around a 1-year, $6 million contract. Put them in there. Give it a go with some of the players you're trying to build toward the future. Don't strap yourself long-term to more people with void years. Please. Isaiah Rodgers, cornerback, another free agent. Better than the cornerback they had in-house, so why not give him a run? Another cheap deal. Mecole Hardman. If you don't bring back MVS, Mecole Hardman, someone else that could also potentially open up that offense, stretch it a little bit. 1 year, $3 million projected right now. Javonte Williams, give him a go to be that 1-2 combination with Alvin Kamara. My second thought on this, all these players, sign them, make all these contracts incentive laden. Make them not likely to get those incentives, but make them incentive laden. If they go out and perform, they're helping the team, you're helping them. You don't want to pay nobody. Stop paying people, or pay the correct people, if anything, if you're going to pay people. Enough about their woes. Let's look at their opponents for next year. Whew. Talking about the Saints will wear you down, mentally and physically. So when you look at the Saints, this is for anyone. The opponents are set out. We don't have the schedule yet. Still be a while before we get the schedule. This is the opponents. You can either have 8 or 9 home games. Saints have 8 this year. Just running through it. This is based on where we're at today, where the rosters are at today. A lot can change. I get that between now and when the season starts. But if we're doing off quick judgments on this roster, on these rosters, this is what I expect from this team. They play Atlanta. They got a home and away. I don't think they're in the same. I mean, it's always close games with Atlanta, the rivalry. But I don't know if they will win either one of them. They play Carolina. Let's say they split that one. Tampa Bay. No, Tampa Bay is ahead of them right now. Arizona. Possibly. They could win that one. I mean, will I be surprised? But I don't think they're to their level yet as far as what the roster is at the given moment in time. Possibly may add 5 or 6 more this year to see what we can do. Maybe we could get a 40 time weighted and unweighted and go from there. Continue with this schedule. San Francisco, they trade Debo. I mean, nothing's really changed too much in San Francisco. They're still easily a tier above the Saints. New England, New York, and New York. These 3 games right here, Saints can win these, especially home games. Look, you got 3 easy wins, or could be potentially easy wins. These teams, I had New York ranked 1. They were ranked 29th. I have not ranked the Patriots and the Jets, but I mean they're going to be close to where the Saints are ranked. So these are 3 winnable games. Going to the away schedule, you have Atlanta, Tampa Bay again. I already spoke on them. Buffalo, not a chance. The Rams, not a chance. The theme of this season coming up, they better win the home games. That's all I got to say for them. Rams, not a chance. Miami, as now, shouldn't lose that game to the Saints. Seattle, hey, they might. DK might be out the building. Tyler Lockett's out the building. Jackson Smith-Njigba may be wide receiver 1 by the time all that's said and done. Chicago was a little bit lower on these rankings, but they are moving up with each passing day, especially with Ben Johnson there and the way he is bringing in same mindset that he had in Detroit with an offensive line that can protect the quarterback. We saw how much of an issue that was for Caleb Williams, turned him into a terrible player in year 1. He's steadily scrambling. So they're a different team right now with that offensive line that they're building around him. Jonah Jackson, Joe Tooney, bringing in some veteran offensive linemen to protect that quarterback. Tennessee, hey, they were ranked absolutely last in these rankings, so Saints should win that one. Take another sip out of this. I'll get mad about this football mug. Got to commit to the bit. So with every team, I want to go over their top players as well. When you talk about the top with the Saints, there's not many to talk about. They have Derek Carr. Depends on what day of the week it is on whether or not you think he's the top player. Alvin Kamara, top player. Chris Olave, if healthy. DeMar Davis, he can defeat Father Time. Big if, though. So not much more than that. And these things will increase as we get farther into the rankings. As we get higher up, we'll have more top players or MVP candidates. With this team, there's no one offensive player of the year, defensive player, no one on either side. It's not happening. I mean, there was, with the Browns, you had Myles Garrett. With the Raiders, you had Max Crosby, who they just made the highest paid quarterback in the league. But with this team, there's no one that's in that stratosphere of most valuable anything. Most improved player. To me, this was the easy choice to pick somebody who could be the most improved. Alontae Taylor. Spoke on him briefly earlier. He ranked absolute last out of qualifying cornerbacks last year based on PFF. That's 116 cornerbacks. He was ranked 1. 44 overall grade. 44 is not like 50 is average. 44 is terrible. This year, he could be the most improved because he's playing in a contract year. So I would think that he's trying to prove what he can do to get some money before he hits free agency. But looking back at last year, his coverage grade was a 34. Terrible. He's just a liability, honestly, in the passing game. We saw passing statistics terrible. So he has room to improve. Most improved doesn't mean he's going to be great, but if he can move from 116 up to 70th, hey, makes him a couple of dollars going into 26. He was 12th in the run. So an average coverage season from him would greatly improve his stock in the NFL, basically. He allowed a 118 passer, had 0 interceptions, 21 missed tackles. The Saints were, I believe, either the only team or one of 2 teams to have 2 players that had 20 or more missed tackles in season. So absolutely ridiculous. He allowed 12.6 yards per reception. Not great. 79 receptions allowed whenever he was in coverage, most in the NFL. And like I said, as of right now, today, he's a starter on his team. So they need to make a lot of moves and hope that he gets a lot better. Best and worst outcomes as we wind down this episode. Best and worst outcomes for this team. Again, it depends on what side of the fence you're on when you're looking at the Saints. One best case scenario is that they stay healthy all season. I mean, that's a coin flip as to if your roster is going to be healthy. We saw what happened with the Niners this year after being in the Super Bowl 2 years ago and get key players on the field, and we saw how much that changed their season. Best case scenario, Kellen Moore is a true offensive mastermind, becomes someone like Kevin O'Connell, Sean McVay with play calling. Carr is a top 10 quarterback. They keep him. He's a top 10 quarterback. They figure out how to shed these salaries that we've discussed over and over again, and they also do well in the draft. Draft has not been great lately. New year. See what happens. See what Mickey Loomis and the gang can do. And they win the NFC South at a best of maybe, 9-8, 10-7. We'll see. That's the outcome in one scenario. Worst outcome? Basically the opposite. Age catches up to them. They have all these aging starters, key players on this team that are not even great to begin with. Carr reverts to being a mid-level quarterback at best. No replacements in the draft. They completely missed. They whiff. Wouldn't be anything new in New Orleans. They continue to press the issue, like I've said before, to be a playoff team and get farther behind the 8 ball with this. And next year, we're in the same issue, but maybe worse off with the salary cap. They're still going to be working their way through this for years to come. This is not just a 2025 issue. They finish the season with a bottom 5 record. It's not out of the realm of possibility when you look at this roster. I mean, like a coin flip, health goes down the drain, season goes down the drain. And we're in the same situation, same scenario going into 2026 as we are today. Not out of the realm of possibility. Drop-off candidates on this roster. I mean, you could argue just about anybody could drop off with the age thing. Derek Carr, last season was statistically his best season in those 10 games based on the averages for his career. Can he duplicate that? Will it be a reversion? Will he drop off? He is getting up in age, but I mean, he's a quarterback. See what Kellen Moore can do for him, or does Kellen Moore even have him on the roster week 1? Drop-off candidates, again, any player age 34 or older. Tyrann Mathieu, 33, but last year was the worst season of his career. Will he continue to decline? Demario Davis, last season was his worst season since 2016. Father time, who's going to in 2025? I know who my money's on for that for sure. And, I mean, they really don't have enough talent anywhere else to say, hey, you're going to drop off from where you were at in 2024. Weren't good enough to drop off with. X factors on this team. With any team, you could argue the quarterback's the X factor. Obviously, the quarterback is the main focus on any roster. Health is this one. Team will be totally different one way or the other. But the draft as a whole is the X factor for me. They desperately need good young talent to come in and shave off some outstanding money, help them get rid of some of these issues, cover up some of these issues, I should say, with the salary cap. They have to hit in the draft this year. They have to. If not, next year may be honestly even worse. If they don't, I mean, I'm telling you, the draft is probably the most important thing for the Saints right now. They have to get young, cheap players to put into the future, because they miss again, it's just going to snowball effect into the future going forward. It just gets worse and worse. So in summary, to wrap up this whole Saints episode and why I have 28th. I don't really put much stock into what Kellen Moore does this season. I don't really care. I'm not going to judge him per se on what he does this season because he's into a job that pretty much literally no one else in the league wanted. He was basically the only candidate that really wanted the job. With Mickey Loomis in the show, I mean, his hands are tied in some shape or fashion. I mean, that's why I don't really put blame on him for 2025. If the Saints finish around 7-9, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest. And I guess that's sort of the expectation. But 5-11 to 9-8 is basically the realm of possibility, especially playing in the NFC South. That's the range. 5-11, 9-8, realistically to me. I mean, Derek Carr could have a solid year in Kellen Moore's offense if he's even here. I mean, that's to be determined with all this aging roster being the issue and all these players at the end of their careers and the health. I mean, the health bug is going to – that in the draft, that's the X factors for 2025. You know, and I say all this to easily say you could argue the total opposite with this. You know, like I said earlier, hit that reset button. Thanks, fans. I'm curious where they stand on this as a whole. But, you know, hit that reset button and see what 2026 can bring for you. You have to take some steps back to move forward going into the future. If you're a Saints fan, let's say, oh, I'm a Saints fan, I would gladly take 3-14 next year to go into 2026 not cap strapped, having some promising pieces to build around, knowing Kellen Moore can lead this team into the future. Get rid of Derek Carr. Do a hard rebuild. Just they're not contending, so what's the point of continuing to press this issue? So that's all I got for the Saints. Long-winded. Been here almost an hour and a half talking about these New Orleans Saints. But there's a lot to be said, especially with all the issues they have with their cap. That's not the end of the episode, though. We still have a little more. Every episode, we end it after we talk about the team. We're going to talk about what's going on in the league. It's the latest news that's going on. So let's see. Let's get this pulled up here. And this is what we're going to go over today. Get another sip of water out of my lovely football mug. I mean, I made this graphic was made today, and there's already been additional changes. You get Trey Hendrickson being allowed to find a trade partner. Christian Kirk being traded instead of cut. Evan Ingram in the last few hours going to be released. It's chaos everywhere. Starting from the beginning, sorry. We have the Seattle wide receiver room. All right, Seattle wide receiver room. You have Tyler Lockett, who was released. $1 million dead cap this year. $17 million save though. He's second in the franchise history in yards with 8,500, almost 8,600. Second reception, 661, and 81 touchdowns. All those are second in franchise history for Seattle. On the other side of that, you have DK Metcalf, who has come out and formally requested a trade, I suppose. There was already the rumors with him in Green Bay. Last year, he was the 35th ranked wide receiver in the NFL. To me, for his size and ability, he came out the same draft with A.J. Brown. He's a big guy for his size and ability. He's been underwhelming, in my opinion. Every season has been pretty much the same. His numbers are pretty much consistent. Not great, but consistent. 66 receptions, almost 1,000 yards, and 5 touchdowns last year. I think the last few seasons have been slightly better, but this was statistically his worst season since his rookie year, you could argue. It's just you're not seeing him become that dominant number one wide receiver that I think people thought he could be early on in his career. The new team, if he is traded, would get $18 million contract in 2025 and a dead cap hit of $25 million in Seattle for this year. Appreciate it. he wants an extension wherever he goes. So we will see how that can be. Is this more of a ploy to get an extension in Seattle? Are they ready to trade him away? Like I said, Green Bay was already rumored to be in talks with Seattle with the trade as a trade. We're talking about sending one of their many wide receivers who have not taken that next step to become a number one. I believe Dobbs was the one that was mentioned in the trade talks with their mid-20s first-round pick. I don't know how that scenario really works well for Green Bay. Does DK Metcalf take them to that next level? Is he a true number one with Jordan Love? I mean, I don't do the attitudes mesh. I mean, Jordan Love don't really have it, I would say. But, like, if DK is not getting the ball to his liking and they're spreading the ball out, I mean, what's the difference between DK Metcalf and Christian Watson? I know Christian Watson is injured a lot, but I don't know. I don't like that scenario for Green Bay. Moving on, Chicago O-line is revamped. Spoke on this earlier. They traded for Joe Thuney, who had the best. He has the best grade out of any guard since 2021. He graded 90.2. So I mean, top tier talent. He is aging. Kansas City has to get under that salary cap hard line coming up soon. So they are making some tough decisions. It's not the first time they've done something like this. So not really surprised. Jonah Jackson was also traded to Chicago Bears from the Rams. He was brought in from Detroit a year or two ago. The Bears have given to me with these two offensive linemen that they brought in. I mean, I believe prior to that, everyone expected them with their early first round pick. Is it the 10th pick, I believe, to take an offensive lineman, or it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility because of the struggles that they had protecting Caleb Williams in 2024. But by bringing in these two guys, and Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson, they definitely have given themselves as a franchise an opportunity or an option to look elsewhere within this draft. I mean, there's a lot of other places they could look going forward besides offensive line, and that speaks highly already of what Ben Johnson's trying to do in Chicago. Talking about the O-line in general, the Rams keep Alaric Jackson. He was a free agent. They bring him back. They're sort of restocking, and there's a lot to see what's going to go on with them. They end up keeping Matthew Stafford. There was the speculation he could be traded. He ends up getting more money, and that affects teams like Las Vegas, New York. What are they going to do? I mean, there's a lot to be said about all those. And then still talking about the offensive line, Trey Smith was another one that had been on the move, and he got tagged by the Chiefs, traded Joe Thuney. So they still have a lot to do. That tag is mid-20s, I believe, 23 million for Trey Smith this year. So we're going to see how that works out. Moving on, we have the Eagles. They're going for a repeat with the way they're rebuilding this roster. You look at the Eagles, and they tend to pay people ahead of time. They pay them before they take that leap. You look at other teams, would they wait too long and it's too late, then they can't afford these players. They take the chance on these players beforehand, and a lot of times they're correct. They extended Saquon Barkley, basically making his possibly earn money into guaranteed money for I believe next 2 years. But now he's going to be the first $20 million running back in the NFL. He gets $41 million total basically with this extension. And Zach Bond, who played for $3.5 million after coming from the Saints, let him go. $3.5 million 1-year contract for him in Philadelphia this year, and he signed a 3-year $51 million. So he definitely gets a pay raise. He did a lot for them. He was basically everywhere on the field for them. They have cut James Bradbury, Darius Slay, their two aging secondary players, which is understandable whenever you saw what they did last year with their two cornerback picks in Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, who have been top tier and improved as the season went on. Moving on to the wide receiver market, Christian Kirk was originally going to be released, but they traded him within the division to the Houston Texans, I believe, for was it a sixth round? Seventh. So minimal compensation. They do get something out of the deal, Jacksonville was, but a little odd to trade him within the division. Last year he was injured, but I mean he had 27 receptions, under 400 yards, and just one touchdown. he had a good season that first season with Jacksonville when everyone said they overpaid for him. Had over 80 receptions, 1,100 plus yards, but it's been downhill since. He was overpaid then, but I mean, now he was around the 20th highest paid wide receiver. I thought he might end up in Buffalo when he was going to be released. You see all the pictures with him and Josh Allen. Didn't come to fruition. Goes to Houston instead. Moving on with the wide receivers, Devontae Adams released. Rumor is he wants a West Coast team. Will he follow Aaron Rodgers? I mean, it's almost like they come as a package deal at this point in time in the NFL. But, I mean, where it is, he's not planning on following Rodgers. See where Rodgers ends up. He has an $8.3 million dead cap hit for the Jets this year. It frees up $30 million, though, for the so big release on their part. They're definitely in rebuild mode. They're revamping. The Saints need to follow on their footsteps with all the players they're letting go. 32 years old, but his age hasn't caught up with him at all because only in 11 games this year, he had 114 receptions for 854 yards and 7 touchdowns. I mean, he still got it in him. He still got to get up and go to make a change on that field. T. Higgins was tagged yet again. I don't get what they're doing in Cincinnati after allowing Trey Hendrickson, who was second. Was he second defensive player of the year or second? He was top tier defense. Let's just say that last 2 seasons. Does he have the most sacks over the last 2 seasons? They're basically, I tweeted out today, the Bengals pretty much want to go into 2025, or so it seems, with the mindset of saying, hey, we're going to win every game by a final score of 45-42. They're letting their best defensive player go. I don't get it. And then they're just going to keep moving on. I know you want to keep Joe Burrow happy, but to what extent? Deebo Samuel was traded to the Commanders. Not a good fit in San Francisco. He's definitely on the decline from where he was a few years ago. But he had running back miles on him. He's a banger. He goes to Washington. He kind of fills the area of need for them. I can only imagine how many wide receiver screens Cliff Kingsbury is going to draw up for Deebo in this offense. Like he's going to have 19 screens per game for 42 yards. It's going to be ridiculous. Moving on to Minnesota and their QB update, not tagging Sam Darnold. And there was a speculation that they could. That's still going to be an interesting storyline to see what happens as it goes on. Are they going to keep Sam Darnold like a 2-year contract, maybe? More of a prove it still type of deal? Because, I mean, he did good in the regular season, get to the postseason. Offensive line falls apart. He falls apart. Ghosts start appearing yet again. Are they going to move on with J.J. McCarthy? Going to be in and see what happens. Combine recap. Just briefly, they had some winners and some losers for sure. You know, some of the people that stood out was Nick Emenwari, the safety. South Carolina, came in, I believe, 6'3", 220. He had a 43-inch vertical. He ran a 4.4 40, had an 11-foot 6-inch broad jump. It was all like number 1 in his category, and then to be that size definitely pushed him up the draft board for sure. Some of the other people that stood out to me, Matthew Golden, he came in, ran a very good 40-yard dash. Landon Jackson, the edge out of Arkansas, definitely came in and improved his draft stock. But on the flip side of that, some of the people that really hurt themselves, the main one to me is Tez Johnson at 154, 158 pounds. He's the lightest player invited to the combine since 1999. Skill position player, since 1999. And then for him, what was it, a 4.5? 4.5? What, it doesn't matter. 4.5 something. At that size is not ideal because if he's going to come in and be that light, he has to have top-end speed, Xavier Worthy, and he doesn't. Dylan Gabriel, same team out of Oregon, he showed his weaknesses as far as his arm talent. You saw him had to step into some of those deep throws. His accuracy wasn't there. I mean, I get that they're working these receivers for basically the first time, but he had the opportunity to push himself up the draft board, and he did not. There were some others that really hurt their draft stock, but those are the ones that stood out. And then you had Maxwell Harrison, who ran a 4.28, so definitely helped himself, cornerback out of Kentucky. But like every episode, this is a Dew Champions is a Buffalo Sports Network. So we always got to talk about the Buffalo Bills, team of focus around here on this network. So what I wanted to focus on with this episode is what are the options for Buffalo, all the stuff that we kind of talked about, but basically the defensive end, defensive tackle market for them. I spoke with one of the other creators on this network, Jake, who has his show, and we talked at length about the DNs and defensive tackles. These are mine. I'm going to talk about them in order of who I think top 2 at each position that they could get. The first one that's right now is out of Oakland, Lord, Las Vegas. Malcolm Kuntz, 27 years old. There's not a lot of, I would say, top tier talent on the free agent market from defensive end. This is excluding if they don't get Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson by some miracle. I mean, it's not impossible. But we're talking free agent, basically, or realistic possibilities. Malcolm Kuntz, like I said, 27 years old, didn't play last year because he had that knee injury. But at the end of 2023, he just skyrocketed. Out of the other free agent options, they are older. You're going to be paying more money for them. To me, he is my number one choice to get as a free agent as an edge player. He is projected at 2 years, $40 million, somewhere in that range. And if you're going to take a chance on someone, I would rather take a chance on someone who's younger at 27 versus the other one that I'm going to discuss next. But the word is that the Raiders want him back. Like I said, in 2023, he didn't play last year, but in 2023, he started to show his talent at the end of that year. In the last 4 weeks of the season, he had 6 sacks. He was on the upswing. If you could convince him to take a short 1-year contract, high money, let's do it. He had 19 pressures over the last 4 games, along with those 6 sacks. So he was just all in the quarterback's group, play after play at the end of that 2023 season. And I feel like he is young enough that he can bounce back from the injury, obviously. But whenever it's an area of necessarily for Buffalo, the area they can improve on, he's my choice. Just help that, go in there and be a pass rusher. Help the Bills out. Get to Patrick Mahomes, get to Lamar Jackson, get them to the Super Bowl finally. On the flip side of that, you could go the old man route, NFL terms, and try to sign Khalil Mack. I mean, he did have a great season last year. He was ranked 5th out of edge players. I mean, he is going to be, I believe, 34 this year, so getting up there in age. But he's projected like 3 years, 50 or 60 million. So definitely a price difference if you're wanting to sign him. The flip side of that with the age thing, this is what worries me. I know players are getting better and better at controlling their health and managing their health. But since 2000, players that are 34 or older, they don't get six or more sacks, which is what he had last year. Even though he was great in all other areas, he did not sack the quarterback that much. It happens, but it's not that often. But he was number 2 in run D last year. And that's what the Bills need a lot, in my opinion, is improvement in that front 4 with the run D. They were ranked 26 per PFF in run defense. So if you want to go get a defensive lineman that's going to help you in the run game, Khalil Mack may be your guy. When you look at defensive tackles, if somehow Jeff Simmons can be available and get out of Tennessee should be blowing that up. I don't know if they want to get rid of him and have no one to really build around. He would be a great option for sure. But out of the free agents, the only one that really stands out to me that I would go get if I'm Buffalo is Teair Tart. He's just 28 years old, again, on the younger side of the free agents. He ranked 17th overall last year out of defensive tackles. If you can get him on the field frequently, I mean, sky's the limit potentially. He played 17 games, but he didn't see a lot of an extreme amount of snaps. But it could be much worse with what's going on in the free agent market. Teair Tart, appreciate the love, Matt. But to me, he's the one I go get. Sure up defensive interior, pair him with the ones that are already there at Oliver, Greg Russo. this is all the hypotheticals of if you don't get option 1A, 1B, and Miles Garrett or Trey Hendrickson. If you're a Bills fan, if you could trade away, I don't know how far to go with this. Would you be willing to trade away your first 3 picks this year for Miles Garrett? Would you be willing to trade the entire draft for Miles Garrett? Do you think he's that much of a game changer? I'm curious to people think. I don't know how far, as a Bills fan, how far are you willing to go get Miles Garrett? Or even Trey Hendrickson? But outside of that, it's going to be interesting. It's the off season, but you can consider it the on season, honestly, because it's really nonstop. The last week has been nonstop news every single day with what's coming out. The cuts are coming. Everybody has to get cap compliant. It's going to be interesting. So we'll see what happens over the next week or two. And then we got the draft coming up. Free agency really about to get going. But other than that, that's all we have for this week's episode. I appreciate the extreme turnout. Really love the support that I've gotten from everybody tonight. Be sure, if you don't already follow me on X, Twitter, you see my handle right here, King NFL Stats right there. Look me up. You can find me with that handle on X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Get a little bit of different type of material on each social platform. And especially follow the guys that Do Champions. Do Champions on X. Do Champions on YouTube. Catch all our other shows. If you want to hear more about Buffalo, for sure. They definitely have the Buffalo Bills area secure. Everything you need. In-depth, detailed commentary, content, everything Buffalo Bills. Until next Thursday at 9:30 Eastern. See you later.